Aaliyah, Waylon's wife, went on an exciting excursion with her husband to witness the release of two juvenile male gorillas, Atlas and Hercules, into the wild. The Aspen Foundation funded the release operation, and Aaliyah was among the few people chosen to watch it in Gabon. Waylon nurtured the gorillas in a refuge before releasing them into the wild, where they were quite secure. Rangers from Beek Plateau met Aaliyah and Waylon as they boarded boats. They were lectured on the protection requirements for the gorilla release and ordered Hercules to remain as still as possible. When the gorillas emerged in the area, the park administrators instructed Aaliyah to calm down Hercules so that they could become accustomed to their presence. The gang sat down among the tall grass, excitedly awaiting the time they had all arrived. Animal cries could be heard since no one dared to make a sound. Aaliyah became alert to something sniffing and moaning, combined with the swishing of tall grass. The gorillas appeared to understand her mind, and the park ranger in charge of Aaliyah's group affirmed that Atlas and Hercules would join them shortly. As the gorillas neared, Aaliyah had a wave of terror and thrill. Atlas and Hercules were even more spectacular than she had anticipated. Hercules, he appeared to be in charge, and Atlas was the first to approach. He sniffed among the gathering before wandering away, as if giving his permission. Atlas watched hesitantly, still dubious of the circumstances. Atlas's glance at Aaliyah made her uneasy, and even though he never approached, it was enough to make her fearful. Aaliyah's encounter with the gorillas shifted her perspective on these animals and the significance of protecting their natural habitat. Waylon spoke to them in soothing tones, hoping they could detect his voice and arrive closer. But the male gorillas weren't looking interested, so after a few minutes, the group abandoned the boats and came back to the park for another session with the gorillas. Aaliyah could not shake the feeling of foreboding. She wanted this trip more than anything else, but it was not going as planned. She was grateful to have seen Atlas and Hercules in the outdoors, but while Hercules seemed dismissive of the group, Atlas appeared to have some suspicions about them. Aaliyah could not stop thinking about how the gorilla had gazed at her and was becoming increasingly anxious by the minute. She silently hoped that if they encountered the gorillas again, they would only see Hercules. She did not believe she could face Atlas again. The gang took a position further into the thicket and waited. Knowing how close the two males had been to Waylon up to 4 years prior, the park rangers who accompanied them appeared eager for them to engage with the gorillas more. Aaliyah felt like the odd one out and did not really want to be there anymore, so they hoped Atlas and Hercules would spend more time with them today. However, she soon heard the usual sounds that meant at least one of the gorillas was around. Aaliyah thought her heart would burst into moans and groans and pound out of her chest. Hercules stepped out of the trees, tentative yet inquisitive. Aaliyah nearly exhaled when she realized Hercules had arrived by himself. Feeling a bit more courageous than the day before, she reasoned that perhaps the day would not be that horrible after all. Walked toward the tiny group. It seems that the ranger had been correct. Recalling them, Hercules was eager to reintroduce himself. A few giggles broke out from the group as he sniffed around everyone and cautiously looked under their bags. When Waylon spoke this time, he listened carefully and soon recognized the voice of the man who had raised him as a baby, but he appeared to grow tired of his new guests and wandered off to lie down. Fortunately, he was still visible to the group, who were grinning at how content Hercules appeared while lying on his back while he snoozed in the afternoon. Aaliyah was appreciative that the trip appeared to be fulfilling her expectations today. Atlas's absence was also beneficial. Aaliyah felt her shoulders loosen up from what seemed to be a stiff stance all day as she watched Hercules sleep, but then she noticed a dark spot moving out of the corner of her eye. Among the trees, Atlas was hiding. Atlas did not seem as brave as Hercules, so he decided to follow the other gorilla's lead today, even though he looked different and scared her even more. The arrival of the second gorilla seemed to lift everyone else's spirits, but Aaliyah's stomach was in knots the day before. He climbed out of the trees and stood up on his back legs to survey the situation. She could not decide whether to keep her eyes on Atlas, so she knew where Aaliyah stood as still as possible or to turn away and try to control her breathing because of his immense stature, which sent a chill down her spine in stark contrast to the hot perspiration she had started to perspire. Despite Waylon's fascination with the gorilla, she became aware of how afraid she was of him, and Atlas abruptly turned to face her, grunting and looking directly at her. Then he descended back to four legs and began strolling towards the gathering. The caution he would show the day before had vanished. This time, he was determined to meet the folks who looked so interested in him. His moans grew louder as he approached, and Aaliyah felt as if the world was closing in on her instinctively. She would close her eyes as Atlas approached, but now she was feeling his burning breath inches from her face. His growls were low and silent. Aaliyah forced her eyes to open to discover herself staring directly into the gorilla's murky pools of eyes. Then she observed his countenance later, and her heart fell in an instant. Atlas grasped her hand, and she heard gasps from the rest of the group. From the angle of her eye, she saw Waylon inch forward. He was talking to the gorilla in a soft voice, expecting he would immediately recognize him as Hercules had. However, everything about her appeared to be a muffled blur. She could not even make out the words her husband was whispered. Unbeknownst to her, he was presenting her as his wife. The gorilla peered deeply into Aaliyah's eyes, not letting go of her hand or breaking gaze. Atlas sat in front of her. She instantly felt her entire world alter. Aaliyah now noticed the park ranger on the periphery of her vision speaking quietly. He indicated that Atlas's grunts were trying a communication. However, Aaliyah understood what she needed to do. Allowing Atlas to keep hold of the hand he would have seized, she carefully raised her other arm, ensuring that the gorilla could see what she was doing. She gingerly placed her free arm around the massive creature, terrified but moved to do so by something she saw in Atlas's eyes. The group was stunned as a gorilla named Atlas buried his massive frame into Aaliyah's body and wrapped his arms around her. Atlas never intended to hurt her, but he simply needed someone to adore him during the day. Atlas turned to Aaliyah's friend, allowing her to rub his head and brush her hair. He never left her side, and the park ranger was amazed at how quickly the gorilla had developed a bond with Aaliyah. Atlas exhibited lack of interest in the rest of the team, and the park rangers could not believe he had transformed from a cautious, scary figure to a beloved joker in such a short period of time. The way Atlas wore the cap served as assurance to Aaliyah that gorillas are exceptionally intelligent animals. He was reacting with attention and wonder to both her and Waylon's voices, demonstrating that he was still thinking about the guy who had nurtured him and recognized her as a member of his family. As the day Waylon came to a close, Aaliyah reminisced about how she had begun her day with dread and the prospect of leaving Atlas. When it came time to leave, the gorilla took her face in his enormous hands and leaned into her. In a moment of genuine connection, the two sat forehead to head, and Aaliyah lifted her head to plant a little kiss on Atlas's nose. The park rangers recorded video of Aaliyah's contact with Atlas throughout the day and asked her whether he could upload them to YouTube to promote the area. Aaliyah agreed, pleased to have a tape she could always look back on. However, the video went viral, demonstrating the national park's excellent work in restoring animals to the wild and dispelling common preconceptions about gorillas. Now tell me, do you like this story? Share anything in the comment below, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us to continue providing you with interesting stories. I hope to see you in the upcoming video. Thank you for watching.